Again, welcome everybody. It is wonderful to have you here at this session. I am delighted to be partnering with somebody there at the university to present with me today, to have me present with her as well. So we've been working on this for a while, and we're so excited to be able to share this information with you. Today, as you can tell from the title, we're talking with you primarily as supervisors or managers in the organization and thinking about this important role and how to head off one of the huge challenges that are going on right now with all kinds of employers all across the country. Many of you have heard of this thing called the Great Resignation, or some people call it the Great Realignment. This phenomena that people are unsettled at work and they're looking for new things. We also heard over the last year a lot about quiet quitting, people who stay in the job but just do enough to get by. And they don't really give themselves over to the work. They're not all that engaged in it, but they continue to stay because it's comfortable, or they don't want to take the effort and energy required to figure out something else. So this is a huge phenomena that is going on in the United States across lots of employers, and all of our institutions are feeling a lot of the same thing. It's hard to find talent. And if you're in the management position and you have an open position, you know that that is true, right? You've experienced that if you're trying to hire somebody or find a person to get into a role. So today we're going to talk about maybe an antidote to that is the best way to say it. So before we get underway, Karen and I are going to introduce ourselves. I'm going to start first, and then we'll go to Karen. So my name is Mark Saine. I work at TIAA, and I'll tell you just a little bit about me and my family first, and then my work, just a really high-level overview. So I grew up in Indiana, lived for a long time in New York, and then in North Carolina, and now I live in Virginia. And actually, I should probably have like half Virginia and half Florida, because right now I'm sitting in Florida, missing the snow, by the way. So I went to a small school in Indiana called Anderson University, a master's degree at Ball State, and a second master's at Columbia Teachers College in New York City. This blue dot represents me. Here's my wife, our kids, their spouses, and of course, what would you expect from that combination? Our 12 grandchildren. So I work at TIAA, and many of you would know TIAA is your financial services or your retirement provider. So that's exactly what TIAA does. And that's a really important thing to be thinking about. That, however, is not my role at TIAA. I work with our institutions and with individuals at our institutions on leadership and career development and professional development. So I tend to think of myself as a leadership and career strategist. So that's a little bit about me. Let's go to you, Karen, and have you tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Proctor-Wicks. I am an Ann Arborite. I'm an alumni of this wonderful institution, Go Blue. I bleed maize and blue, as well as I am currently, after 19 years here at the University of Michigan, the HR director at the U of M School of Dentistry. I have worked with Robert Half International as a division director, as well as a manager down at the Monroe Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So you might have rented a car for me at some time. One of the things that has been very passionate of me for my roles in my whole career is supervisor development, because when I was first a supervisor with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, we may have had actually the highest customer service rating in Southeast Michigan. I'm very proud of that fact. But unfortunately, my regional manager came to me one day and said, Karen, you're awesome with your external customers, but you need to take care of your own staff. And I was floorboard. I was like, what does that mean? I thought I was. And I found out I wasn't. So then I had to take a step back and look at what I was doing and learn, what should supervisors be doing? Because I've always said a leader may or may not be a supervisor, but all supervisors are leaders. And sometimes the impossible seems impossible until you just buckle down and do it and you get it done. That's one of my mantras. So I have my 3rd degree black belt in Choi Kwando, which is an offshoot of Taekwondo. And I didn't even think I would even get my 1st degree, but I was committed to do it. And with martial arts, a black belt is just a white belt who never stopped. And I didn't stop. And so I'm excited to be with all of you today. What we're going to do today is we're going to actually start by getting to know each other. We're building community. We've been charged with this all day today. And yes, getting to know one another. I'm meeting individuals. I've seen their names maybe once or twice, but now I'm getting to meet them in person. And that's been amazing. And we're going to continue to do that. So when I break out into our breakout groups, there's going to be about 3 to 4 of you in a group. Mark and I like doing in-person presentations, so we had to do some pivoting ourselves on how we're doing some of our activities. But we're going to create these groups, you're going to join those groups, and then you're going to introduce yourself. And then you want to think about, well, what is the best supervisor or manager you've ever had? And what made them effective? I could tell you my best supervisor, she engaged with me. She challenged me. She pushed me. She let me vent to her and she heard me. But how did I feel working with this person? I felt empowered. It was so hard to leave the supervisor. I didn't want to leave them. And so that was a role model I wanted to follow. So after we do some introductions with one another in your group, and I want you to get to know each other, I'm going to send out a message and we're going to talk in your teams as, why do we even have supervisors? What is the purpose of having supervisors? I hope everyone here has a supervisory part of their role, but if not, I want your feedback. We want your feedback because this is how your supervisors should be. This is what we want our supervisors to be, especially here at the University of Michigan. We always say we want the leaders and best. Let's go for it. So I'm creating our breakout rooms right now, and I'm going to open them up, and then in about 10 minutes, maybe 15, I will send out a message to start your next part of your conversation, and we'll keep in touch. Exciting to hear what you guys have to say to each other. Thank you. And they're opening up now. We are slowly welcoming everyone back. They have about 30 seconds. We want to give a chance for everyone to wrap up their conversations. We hope you got to hear each other's stories, learn a little bit about each other, talk about what an awesome day you're having today. And everyone is back in 3, 2, 1. We're bringing everyone back. Wonderful. Welcome back, everyone. Again, Mark and I hope you've been having some great conversations, but we're interested in hearing from a few of you. Can you tell us about what you think the role of a supervisor is? You can either put it in chat or just speak out loud. We want to hear you.
Yeah, I'd really love to hear, why do we have supervisors? That's a really intriguing question.
And it's more than just someone to approve my timesheet.
Liaison, mentor, right?
Absolutely.
How do you spell liaison? Oh, I think. Wait, how do you spell it?
Yeah, someone to motivate us, someone to recognize us if we do something good.
Mhm.
and someone to help us know the mission of our department and to help do our role to get there.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And I hope all of you have
Supervisor.
had at least the experience of having a great supervisor, because they are out there and when we continue to develop them. So I hope you've had that experience. Because once you have a good supervisor, don't you feel empowered?
Mhm.
Don't you feel like you can tackle the world sometimes? I know the good ones that I've had, I have learned so much, and I learned and I grew and I became a better person. And that's how I got to where I am now. The couple of not so great ones, I learned from them on what not to do. And I made sure I did not copy those same behaviors. I did not let them stop me.
Liaison mentor to assist with other
And
country supervisors skills.
so having that mentor and that positive influence as your lead, as your leader, can go a long way. But how do we help strengthen that relationship? We always want to have these strong relationships with our supervisors. So Mark, I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen. And thank you so much for the feedback here in the chat. So I want to just dive into this question just a little bit deeper. Why do we have supervisors? We spend a lot of time in institutions and organizations thinking about the people sort of at the top, the executives. And there's a lot of research around them. But actually, I think most of the action of any organization comes about because the supervisors or managers are involved in it. And so this is a role that is so often overlooked, but I think it's a really critical role, and it's easy to lose sight of how important this role is. So if you have the little learner guide that we sent out, that was PDF to you, if you signed up for the program, this got sent to you in an email. If you don't have it, just put your email in a chat and we'll get it sent to you. We're going to go to that and we're going to start thinking through this question: why do we have supervisors, just a little bit more deeply and looking at some of the research. So we're going to start out with what I call the supervisor equation. So this helps sort of answer that question. So why do we have supervisors? So first of all, supervisors and managers, as another word we often use for supervisors, they are at the front line of any set of work. And so this is really important because higher up you go in an organization or at the university, the further you get away from sort of the day-to-day work that makes things possible. And so you can kind of lose touch if you're not careful, but supervisors are on the front line. And it's interesting, the other word we use for supervisor, manager, is a really interesting word because the root word of manager comes from the same root word that we use for the word hands. Isn't that interesting? So managers, supervisors are hands-on. They know the work, and that's really important. One of the critical things that supervisors do is create the emotional weather, if you will, the environment, if you will, that other people work in. Now, nobody knows what the environment is unless you're in it, unless you're a part of it. We're not broadcasting what the environment, the emotional environment is, but people feel that when they go to work. And I'm sure as you were talking about the best supervisor you had, part of that being the best was they created this sort of space or environment that made possible the best in you. In other words, you were sort of allowed, so to speak, or enabled to bring out the best talents, the best skills that you have. And that's a really important part of what a supervisor does. It's usually not in the job description, create great environment. Usually not in the job description, but I think it's a critical aspect of being a supervisor. And here's the important thing to know about this, that as supervisors, we create the weather, if you will, the environment for our teams, for those people that report to us, for those that follow us. And the weather can be kind of cloudy or it can be bright. And I always tell managers and supervisors, the emotional, the feeling that people have when they work on the team often comes from you as the supervisor. You create the emotional weather that other people need to work in. All right, so you handle things, you manage things, you're on the front lines, you create the emotional weather, and that is really critical. Because one of the things we know from research, and this is just a recent piece of research that came from the Gallup organization, is that 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager. In other words, managers and supervisors create this environment, and whether people contribute to it, do their best, want to stay and want to leave, a big piece of that has to do with the manager. And perhaps you've even heard this over the years, like people start with organizations, but they quit because of managers. And so 70% of a person's experience on their job has to do with how they're treated by their supervisor, with the person that they report up to and look up to for guidance and direction and all the other things that supervisors do. So this is not only a critical role at kind of at the organizational level, but it's critical to each person, because it's hard to thrive in an organization when you don't have the supervisor that supports you, when you don't have the supervisor that creates the right kind of experience for you to get your work done. All right, and so then the last part of this little equation is that when people are working in that environment, when the manager is contributing their best, when the manager is concerned about the people, then that means people can produce, they can be productive, they can become engaged. And engagement really matters because we know that there is a relationship between people being engaged and how much they produce. So let's just talk for a moment about this notion of engagement and figure out, what does engagement really mean? Because there are different kinds of engagement in organizations. You see here on the screen, I'm going to talk through sort of three types of engagement. The first one we're going to look at is what we call actively engaged. So how many managers, or how many people, I should say, are actively engaged in sort of the average organization? Well, this is Gallup's research. It has barely budged for decades. And what they find is in the latest survey, 2022 is the last one that they've done, is that 36% of the population of employees are actively engaged. So actively engaged is a really important category. And what we mean by actively engaged is that someone who is actively engaged, they're willing to go above and beyond. They're willing to do things that are quote unquote outside of their job description. In other words, we call this, they're willing to give discretionary energy. Energy that's not required, but that's given freely in order to get things done. Those are the actively engaged. But as you probably have guessed, and you can see it on the screen, not everybody is actively engaged, right? So we have a large population of people in the average organization who are not engaged. So the not engaged, well, of course, they're not engaged. What that means is, first of all, they're not willing to give discretionary energy. As a matter of fact, people in this category want to do just enough to sort of not get in trouble, just enough to skate by, just enough to sort of not get noticed. So this is almost half of the employee population at sort of the average institution, the average employer. Not engaged people want to be engaged. So they're not bad people. They want to be engaged. Everybody wants to be engaged at work. But for some reason, there's something sort of holding them back and just sort of keeping them at this level of, I'm just going to do enough just to kind of skate by. Then, of course, there is this third category of people that we call the actively disengaged. Very different than the not engaged people. They are not engaged, of course, but they're not content just to be not engaged. They actually want to bring other people into their disengagement. So they're actively sort of recruiting people to become more disengaged. And these are the people that as managers and supervisors, we really sort of need to get our arms around and figure out what's going on there. Because if we're not careful, they can recruit other people to their disengagement. So does all this stuff really matter? Does it be being engaged or not engaged or actively disengaged? Does that matter or not? Well, remember I said that engagement is related to productivity. So let's take a look at how productive are people at these levels of engagement. We're going to start with the actively engaged, right? So we know that's 36% of the people in the average organization. So how productive are actively engaged people? Well, the research tells us that actively engaged people are productive about 90% of the time in their job, meaning that in a given work week, let's say it's a 40-hour week, they're engaged most of that 40 hours, about 35, 36 hours actually of engagement, which means they're going above and beyond. They're doing their work. They're contributing fully. They're giving discretionary energy, and they're putting in a lot of effort. And out of that effort, they're able to be really, really productive. So that matters, right? There's a difference between these folks and the other two groups that you're going to see in terms of productivity, and this difference really matters. So we're getting a lot of productivity, and some people would say, well, why isn't it 100%? Well, the reason it's not 100% is that in every organization, there's what I call friction, right? It's hard to get some things done. Things are complex. It's not always easy to be productive 100% of the time in an organization or on a team. But these people are figuring out most of the time how to be really productive. All right, so that's our first level of engagement, actively engaged. Now, let's go to those who are not engaged. We said this is in the average organization. Gallup tells us this is about 49% of the population. How productive are these people? Well, wow, 70% of the time. So that is about 3.5 days of a work week that these people are pretty productive, which of course means what? 1.5 days of a work week, they're not productive. They're not doing things that contribute much to the work of the team or to moving things ahead. So what if we could just notch these people up, even a few percentage points? Let's say we could get them 5 percentage points or even 10. That would be another half a day of work or so, productive work. So this means that there's a little opportunity with these people. And here's the thing we know about this group is that it probably wouldn't take all that much to get them to move, to become more productive, to get them more engaged. All right, we got one more group, right? So how productive are the actively disengaged? We said that the actively disengaged, this group is about 15% of the average population at an organization. So how productive are they? Ouch, 50% productive. So 50% of their time, they're working on things that matter. They're moving the important things ahead. What are they doing the rest of the time? Well, aren't they, I think, actively engaged at trying to recruit people to their disengagement? They are disengaged and they want others to be disengaged with them. So they spend a lot of time trying to, whether they know it or not, whether they're saying it to themselves or saying it to others or not, they're trying to get other people to come along with them in their disengagement. So what if we could work this group to be just a little bit better? Now, I have to tell you, this group is hard because this number doesn't budge a lot. I think our real opportunity is with those who are not engaged, to move them to more, to get them more engaged. not to say that this group won't budge, it's just a little harder to get this done, get this accomplished. But remember, this is important because if we can get people more engaged, we know that they're going to become more productive. So how do we get people to be more productive? Some of us might say, well, we got pay, so can't we just pay them more? Wouldn't that lead to productivity? And one of the things we know about pay is while we all like it and we want more, pay is actually not all that closely correlated to somebody being engaged. There are people that get paid a lot and they're disengaged. There are people that don't get paid as much, but they're fully engaged. So there isn't necessarily sort of a one-to-one, like I get paid a lot, so I'm going to be really engaged, a one-to-one correlation between those things. So what is it that gets people engaged? Well, I want to talk just about 3 ingredients of engagement. The first ingredient is what you see here on the screen. People want to be engaged, and one of the ways that they can get engaged is to know that what they do really matters. So we need to understand and help other people understand what the purpose of the team or the organization is and why that purpose matters. And we want to enlist them into that purpose. We want them to bring their best talents and skills to helping with fulfilling that purpose. Purpose matters. And it sounds like, it's one of those things that's elusive and kind of hard to get to. And, it's not as easy to count up as the salary someone is making. But we know that when people feel a sense of purpose about their work, they are able to become more productive because they know that the work matters. And therefore, they know they're contributing to something that helps other people or moves something along. So the first ingredient is a purpose that matters. The second ingredient is people want latitude about how the work is done. It turns out that almost nobody wants somebody over their shoulder all the time telling them what to do and telling them exactly how to do it. So what's the role then for managers, right? Aren't managers supposed to be guiding the work of others? Yes, that's true. And there's kind of a second part to that. We need to let people figure out for themselves how they get that work done. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to that. There are sometimes roles or jobs or tasks that have to be done one way in order for it to exactly be right. There may be even compliance or regulatory reasons for doing something one way. But in most organizations, on most teams, most of the places at the institution, there isn't just one way to get something done. People want some space to use their own creativity to get something done. So this is a really key thing here. For managers, this means that oftentimes we need to share with people where we want to go, but not always share with them exactly how to get there. So it's really tempting when you're a manager or supervisor to want to say, okay, we got to get this X project done. And the way we're going to do that is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, maybe there are projects where it's better to say, the goal is to get this accomplished. I don't necessarily have the specific way we can accomplish it. Use your creativity, use your imagination, use your talent and your experience and your skills to move us in that right direction. That's the second ingredient. Having latitude, feeling like I have some latitude about how my work gets done, which means I have some choice about how it gets done. The third ingredient is that people want opportunities to learn and to grow. Nobody wants to go to a job where you say, hey, keep doing this job and do it for the next 30 years and don't change anything at all. Of course not. That sounds really boring. And after a while, it's disinteresting and we would get disengaged, right? So this is about professional development, of course. People want an opportunity to learn and grow. They hunger to do that. People love to solve things. They love to think and create new things up. So this opportunity to learn and grow is a way to create deeper engagement in their role. So we don't have time to really dive into each of these three ingredients, right? We're going to focus mostly on this one. What are the opportunities for you and for your team to learn and grow? So Karen, let's move in that direction.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for also emphasizing that professional development. Yes, please. Everybody wants it. There's been surveys done wherever I've been at the University of Michigan. There's always been a survey of the staff. And one thing is universal. Everybody wants professional development opportunities, and they want the time to be able to have those professional development opportunities. And, you know, hopefully if someone can pay for it, that's the cherry on top. But one of the ways that supervisors can be the best selves and be the best for their team is if they understand what's going on with their staff. But let's look at things from a different perspective. Mark, can you to the next slide?
Sure.
So one way that we have historically found out about employees' experiences is the exit interview. So I'm going to launch a poll right here. And all of you, please respond. How many of you have experienced an exit interview in your career? Wow, I like that. This actually surprises me because I thought that yes would be higher, but that's okay. Because that tells me, okay, so, but the problem with exit interviews, as well intended as they are, because units and departments and schools, they want to know what's going on. They want to know why people might be leaving. They want to know about their experience. They want to know how the relationship was with the supervisor. Those are all great. But exit interviews are reactive. They're after the fact. The person's already gone. They've exited, or they're on the way out the door because they accepted another offer. So exit interviews are good. It's a data point, but it's a reactive data point because what can you do at that point? I'm going to end that poll, but also I want to ask a different question. How many of you, while you're in your jobs, have ever had feedback for your employer and were never asked? It's like, how are things going? What could you see? What could we do better? What could this be better? How's this process? Oh my goodness. This is so telling. With the yeses, you know, definitely outweighing the no's. There's so much untapped potential there. So instead of being reactive, and I'm sorry, for some reason, my poll is not launching to everyone. I apologize for that, Anne. Thank you for letting. Right now, it says, here we go, share results. 88% said yes. They've got stuff holding inside. They have valuable insight. As supervisors, let's not be reactive with those exit interviews. Let's be proactive with some employee engagement. Let's talk to them while they're with us, because that way we can address things in the moment and not when it's too late to do anything.
Hey, Karen, I just have
Yes.
one thought about this. You know,
Mhm.
if you are a supervisor or manager, it's possible that your team has feedback for you that you're not getting today.
Absolutely. There are so many people that keep things close to their chest. Maybe they don't feel comfortable. Maybe they don't have a strong enough relationship. Maybe they feel retaliation if it's too negative. There are so many different things that can go through a person's mind, but let's give them the opportunity to have a voice. The engagement between a supervisor and their employee is so critical to a working relationship. It's also critical to ensuring that those employees feel valued and heard. So how can you get people to feel comfortable about to give feedback? Let's open it up. Let's have those things called breakout conversations. Let's not wait until performance reviews. You can have these conversations at any point. I encourage you to actually start thinking about having them now if you haven't already done so. Because we want to make sure that it's a chance to touch base. It's a chance to connect, to see what's going on, the good, the bad. If there's ugly, let's tackle it. What are those obstacles? What are they interested in? But it's also a chance to give them ideas about their work and what are they looking to do? One thing I talk about with my team is what strengths, what do you love most about your job right now? What do you enjoy doing? Are you having enough opportunities to do that? But I also say, where do you want to grow? What are your challenges? Why are they challenges for you? And then I look for opportunities, and it's tailor-made for each one of my team members because everyone is different. So there's different ways to gather information, but these breakout conversations not only build that relationship with your teams, but it helps them feel engaged, and you have ideas on how to develop them. Because the part of every supervisor's job, an essential function, is not only hiring the best, but growing and developing the best. We want to see them grow. We want to see them expand. We want to challenge them in a positive way. When I see somebody get to the point where they can promote themselves, whether it's within my unit or outside mine, I celebrate because they're moving in the direction that works for them. It's so horrible, though, when supervisors just want to hold on to those people. We don't want to do that. And these breakout conversations help make sure we don't do that as supervisors. Because having those conversations can also give you the chance to say, how, as a supervisor, can I help them? How can I help them grow? How can I meet their needs? So let's talk about what those conversations could look like. We're actually going to open up our breakout rooms. And Mark, can you help explain the next part of this, what we're doing, the engagement conversation?
Sure. Yeah. So we are going to do a little practice here and have some conversations. We call them engagement conversations. So think of these as sort of a chance to check in. Now, this isn't the real thing today, right? We're just doing some practice with each other. You're not going to be in a breakout room with your direct report, so you're not actually conducting one of these conversations, but we want you just to practice one just a little bit. And a real engagement conversation is a chance to check in with somebody. An engagement conversation is about people's work and the questions they have about their work and the areas in which they would like to develop. And it also provides you as the supervisor with an opportunity to give your perspective on a staff member's strengths and growth opportunities. So we're going to practice one of those by putting you into a breakout room. And what we are going to do is, using the little PDF guide that we sent you on pages 2 and 3, you'll see a little script there to have one of these engagement interview conversations. Of course, you don't have time to talk through 15 questions. So start with number 1 and go as far as you can. I'd love for you to try and get a couple of them done. And the way I'd like you to do it is make sure that everybody has the chance to talk. So start with question number 1 first, which is, do you feel you're part of the bigger vision and mission? Why or why not? Just talk about that. First round, everybody just talks about that question. Then, if you have time, go as a group to the second question and answer that question, and continue on until our breakout room closes. It's going to close faster than you want it to. I'll tell you that right now. As soon as you get into these questions, you want to stay as soon as you get into these conversations, I should say, you're going to want to stay in these conversations. But of course, we have a couple of other things we want to share with you as well. So Karen, if you would put them in rooms, go to page 2 and start the conversation.
And the rooms are now open to everyone. Please feel free to join. If anyone's having problems joining a room, please let us know. Welcome back, room 4. Everyone will be joining us back in about 5 seconds, actually. Hope you had some great conversations. Welcome back, everyone, as we're getting back to our session. If we were in person, and Mark and I apologize because we love presenting in person, these would be individual conversations between 1 or 2 of you. So we had to pivot. So if you didn't have enough time, we totally understand. But one thing to think about rhetorically as you're thinking about those engagement conversations and the ones you did get a chance to talk about, what did you learn about yourself as you responded to those questions? You can either say it out loud, you can share in the chat. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance. What did you learn about yourself as you looked at those questions and interviewed yourself and interviewed each other?
I felt validated in some things that I already believed.
Absolutely. Yes, no one is alone. Especially here, the university seems really huge, but what you'll find is you have these conversations that more and more people actually have the same experience. And I hope you've learned that today by just the interactions we've had in this conference, that so many people are going through similar things, that people, there are those issues, exactly, Kelly, that, you know, maybe you think are hidden, but actually more people know about them. They know it's out there. It's just no one's talking about them. Let's bring them to light. And as supervisors, what can we do to address them for our staff? Because that will make our teams stronger. So Mark, I'm leaving it up to you.
Great. Thanks, Karen. So it's great to have these conversations. I think they're really necessary. And most of us, like I said, want to talk about these things. We often just don't have the opportunity to do it. But once we've had a conversation like this, especially with members of our own team, the people who report to us, we need to move from that conversation to a plan. So that's what I just want to introduce to you in a little bit of the time that we have remaining, is helping people think about their learning agenda. So remember, one of the things that motivates people, one of the things that engages people is having the opportunity to learn and grow and develop. So we want to get specific about what that is. And so here in the learner guide, there's actually 3 pages related to this. So it's actually the same form 3 times, but you can use this form first to develop yourself. So on page 6 of this PDF that you got, there's this little what I call a learning agenda. I prefer the word agenda to learning goals or something like that. To me, the word agenda just has a little bit more urgency behind it. What is it I really need to be focused on for my own learning? And what you have here on that page are places to write down your development goals. Generally, I would say we don't want, at any given time, it's probably not a good idea to have more than 3 development goals, right? You just can't concentrate on that much. Interestingly, the research tells us the less you concentrate on, the more likely it is you're going to get done the things that you concentrate on. So what you would do to develop one of these learning agendas is identify 2 or 3 development goals for yourself and then work through the specifics. Get specific about what the goals are. So on page 6, you'll see the question there is, what are you trying to accomplish? In other words, what's your learning goal? Get specific about that. Then when do you want to get, or when do you need to get it accomplished? That's the time frame. And then this notion of sources and resources is about who can teach you this thing that you want to learn about, or where can you learn about it? Perhaps there are other resources, a course or a video or a YouTube or an article or a book. Where are the sources of the learning, and what resources can you use? And then this last column, I think, is really critical. What support do you need from your manager in order to learn this? And I think this is a great conversation for us as managers to be thinking about for our own staff. Help them get clear about what their development goals are. So, and then offer the support that you can provide towards those learning goals. So if we were to have time, we would have done one more little activity on the page next door, page 7. And that would be to choose a person from your team and do a little brainstorming around their learning goals. From your perspective, what are the couple of development goals that would make sense with them? And then you would think through the specifics and share this with them in a conversation. The better thing, I think, the best thing to do is kind of share this process with people and then get them thinking about their own development and developing their own learning agenda. So in order for this conversation that you just engaged in to come to life, I think you have to have a development plan, or a learning agenda, as I prefer to call it. You have to have a learning agenda which drives you forward. You got to get clear about what it is you want to learn and how you're going to learn it and what support you're going to learn it and when it all needs to get done. Those are really great questions to be asking yourself. Then you have something actionable to go do by completing that learning plan. So Karen, let's just go to one last thing here, and that is, what should these folks be doing after we end in just a few minutes? What's next?
Before I do that, Mark, we have a great question from our group here. Shannon asked, how do you engage staff who just please say, I don't know, when you ask them what they're looking for? Acknowledge it. You know, if you need to give them some time, encourage them, because it's not, you know, they're not necessarily actively disengaged. They may just never have thought about it before. They've never had someone ask them. They might need time to reflect. So for those that, you know, I don't know, give them some time.
Yeah.
Have them think about, what do they enjoy doing? Usually thinking about the positive always helps first. You know, because we want to celebrate the positive, especially if you know they're doing something outstanding. Then if they still don't answer you, it's like, think about, what have you always wanted to do? What are your interests? And just get them thinking about it and give them some time to consider it. You don't have to answer right there in the moment. There are those that are like, I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Those are those actively disengaged. That is an uphill battle, but sometimes it could be for a totally different reason. That could be a whole different conversation that we don't have time to get into today.
Right.
But just offer it, open the door. You can't make someone walk through, but you can encourage them and celebrate them and make them feel valued and show how you can help them as their supervisor. Sometimes you have to.
That's so great. Because I do think that there are going to be people who will be sort of like deer in the headlights. Like, what do you mean? I got to have a learning agenda, and give people time to think about it. I think one of the best ways that you can get people thinking about it is by sharing your own, because that gives them an example to follow. And it also sends this other message that is critical, that learning happens in every role. Even when you become a supervisor or a manager, you're not done learning. You have a learning agenda too. And, you know, just by that example, it sends a very powerful message that they need to have one as they grow and develop. It's not an option in an organization on whether you grow and develop, right? This isn't an optional thing. So there are people who would say, just leave me alone. But you can't leave them because the world is changing and the institution is changing. And we have to change and continue to grow and develop as well. Share yours. Start there. I think that's a great place to start.
Absolutely, Mark. I mean, for instance, I'm in a program with Mark right now that's helping with my development. And because of just the sessions that I've attended, this is called the Emerging Leaders Network with HR professionals in higher education. I have learned so much about myself and I have developed, and I was able to transfer those skills to my new team here in the School of Dentistry. So I am constantly learning, I'm constantly growing, and I accept the feedback to help me be my best self and help me grow. But let's talk about the supervisors. What's next? Well, schedule conversations with each person on your team. Try it just with one. Test drive it. Get used to it. See how it goes. Share your story. And then give them a copy of the learning agenda, kind of explain it, and have them draft something. Have them look at it and complete it. And then follow up with them. And don't let it be a one and done. Go back to it. Has it changed? I always say change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. So don't let the conversation just stop once. Go back to it. How's it going? Or maybe you find a new resource, or maybe they find a new resource. Have them share their resources. Another thing I do is I encourage with my team that when they have attended any learning session, what's the one thing that they got from that? What's the one thing that's helped them, that's energized them, that really resonated with them, and share it with the group? Because sometimes that sharing builds that community and builds those connections. So just keep that door open. Schedule those conversations. Don't shy away from them. And let me tell you, if you have problems with those conversations or need help with them, I'm out here. I'm at the School of Dentistry. I'm available via email, via Zoom, via Google Chat. I'm here on site and I'm here to help. So for any of you, my door is always open. If any of you need assistance with what we've talked about today or having those conversations, feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for. Mark?
Yeah, so Karen, I always like to provide a few resources for what we've been talking about. If you're interested in this topic, if you want to grow, continue to grow as a manager and deepen your expertise in that area, these are some of the resources I used as I developed my pieces of content and Karen's pieces of contents as well. So we encourage you to look at these things and take a picture of the screen right now. And so you have that list of books in front of you, but there are a lot of other resources out there. And frankly, the PDF that we gave you is an invaluable resource. Having those interviews isn't just about them answering the questions. It's about you sending a powerful message that I care about your development, and I care enough that I'm spending our time together talking about your development and learning about you and what you need. So that's a really powerful message to your employees and to those who follow you. All right, with that, any additional questions or feedback for us?
Well, if you get off of this and go, oh, why didn't I ask the question when I had the chance? Feel free to ask it, feel free to email it to me. I'm happy to help. Because one of the things I got into HR for and actually love what I do is because I love helping people. So if I can help you, no matter where you are at this university, I pay it forward and I'm happy to do so. So just know you're not alone out there.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Karen, thank you for the opportunity to work together, and thank all of you for joining us. And use the resources that we've talked through. Your job as a supervisor is incredibly important to the institution, and it creates so much in other people's lives. So thank you for working on getting better at it.
And as you think about how often you should have these types of conversations, however often they're needed, but at least quarterly, at least.
Yeah.
But you can have them as often as needed to make sure that your team develops and grows.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have gotten a lot out of today's conference today, not just this session. Thank you again, Mark. I always like partnering with you. And even though you're in nice sunny Florida and I'm with the snow, take care, everyone. Be safe and go blue.
There you go. Bye, everybody. Great to work with you.
Thank you.